Libra, my beautiful soul of harmony and grace. This is not just another reading. This is a sacred moment of awakening. Today's message is clear and undeniable. Someone is about to leave your life for good and they will not return. But you, Libra, you will not break. You will rise. You did not arrive here by chance. Something deep within your spirit led you here, perhaps even before you consciously knew why. And now, you're about to understand it all. There is a goodbye approaching that your heart has already sensed long before your mind could accept it. This isn't a sudden loss, it's a quiet unraveling. A sacred release. A divine ending wrapped in silence. Like the final note of a symphony echoing into stillness, like the closing of a wooden door at sunset, something within you knows, this chapter is ending. And although the world around you may still look the same, your inner world is shifting forever. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange in-between space where things feel blurry, emotions surface without warning, and time seems to stretch and contract all at once. You're not broken, Libra. You're awakening. The universe has chosen this moment to speak directly to you because you are ready. And that is why this video found its way into your hands. Not to deliver fear. Not to predict doom. But to gently guide you through what is unfolding, and more importantly, to remind you that even in this goodbye, there is extraordinary purpose. Because this isn't about the one who's leaving. It's about you, the one who is finally ready to stop shrinking to keep the peace, the one who is choosing truth over illusion, freedom over attachment, and inner peace over external approval. There is a time for clinging, Libra. And there is a time for letting go. This is that time. And as it's written in timeless wisdom, those who sow in tears will reap in joy. You are sowing something powerful to die, a new version of yourself rooted in courage, clarity, and compassion. If what I'm saying already speaks to something you've been feeling in your own heart, if your intuition has been whispering that something is ending so that something sacred can begin, then I want you to pause, breathe deeply, and comment below with this affirmation. I trust the ending. I welcome the peace. Not just to be seen, but to declare to yourself and the universe that you are no longer resisting the shift. And before we go further, let me take a moment to sincerely thank you for being here. Every like, every comment, every subscriber to Zodiac Whisper Tarot is more than just support, it's sacred energy. It's what allows this space to exist as a sanctuary for souls like yours who are awakening, healing, and rising. Your presence here means everything. And I promise you, Libra, you'll want to stay with me until the very last second of this video, because what the universe is about to reveal next will not only change how you see this goodbye, it will change how you see yourself. Now tell me, my faithful Librus, what has your soul been holding on to that's finally ready to be released today? There comes a moment in every Libra's life when the scales you've spent so long carefully balancing begin to tip, not because you've failed, but because your soul is ready for a deeper truth. For you, harmony has never been about silence or suppression, but about beauty, peace, and meaningful connection. Yet so often, you've traded your inner clarity for external approval, sacrificing parts of yourself just to keep things looking intact. You've smiled when you wanted to speak. You've agreed when you longed to walk away. And deep down, you've known something has to change. That change begins now, not with a dramatic collapse, but with a quiet shift. The kind of shift that starts not in chaos, but in stillness. There's someone in your life or something that is gently detaching. This detachment may not come with closure, explanation, or even warning. But the absence is growing. The conversation feels strained, the connection begins to blur, and instead of panicking, something inside you exhales. Because this time, you're not holding it all together. You're letting it fall away gracefully. What you're experiencing, Libra, isn't abandonment. It's alignment. And while it may feel like loss on the surface, this is actually your spirit choosing truth over illusion. For so long, you've tried to maintain the peace. But peace that costs your voice, your energy, or your dignity was never peace to begin with. Pain often signals the beginning of awakening. And for someone like you, whose heart is tuned to the frequency of others, the greatest lesson comes not through confrontation but through the soft ache of knowing that you've been too kind to yourself in theory, but not in practice. This is your invitation to begin again, not with blame, but with awareness. It's okay to admit that you've been tired. That you've overcompensated in a relationship that was already half empty. That you've kept showing up when your spirit begged for rest. Your heart is not a courtroom where you have to justify your decisions. Your inner knowing is your permission. When someone begins to fade from your life, whether slowly or suddenly, it's natural to question what you could have done differently. But sometimes, the most sacred goodbyes are the ones that happen without dramatic endings. It's not about one final argument or a pointed betrayal. It's about the quiet realization that you've outgrown the connection, or it has outgrown you. And instead of fighting to keep it alive, you're choosing to let it go without guilt, without regret. You don't need to explain your evolution to anyone. You are allowed to grow in silence. You are allowed to change without apologizing. And you are allowed to say, I want something more for myself, even if that means saying goodbye to someone who once felt like home. There's a gentle strength in choosing yourself without needing someone else to be the villain. And while the world may not understand how hard that choice is, you do. You've spent a lifetime trying to be fair. Now, it's time to be fair to yourself. Even scripture reminds us without needing to name it we were never meant to carry what was never ours. Sometimes, love means release. Sometimes, protection comes in the form of closed doors. And sometimes, healing begins the moment we stop begging for clarity and start giving ourselves closure. So if your heart is heavy right now, know this: you are not breaking. You are unfolding. And no matter how quiet this chapter feels, it's already leading you to something softer, clearer, and more aligned with who you've become. Let that truth settle. Let it be enough. Let it be the first step into a new kind of peace, one where you no longer have to choose between balance and honesty. You can have both. And it begins with this letting go. What if the version of yourself you've been holding on to is no longer the one you're meant to become? For Libra, a sign ruled by Venus and driven by beauty, fairness, and connection, it's easy to confuse adaptability with authenticity. You've been so good at reflecting others' needs, moods, and expectations that at times, you may have forgotten where you truly end and someone else begins. But now, something within you is stirring. A quiet urge to reclaim what you abandoned along the way, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence for your own truth. This moment you're facing is not just about letting someone go. It's about releasing the version of you that needed them to stay. The part of you that tried to become whatever they needed, just to feel worthy of being loved. You see, real love never requires you to vanish. It doesn't ask you to shrink your light or soften your voice to remain easy to keep. And yet, so many times you did exactly that, not because you were weak, but because you were loyal. Loyal to a future you dreamed together. Loyal to the version of you that believed keeping peace meant keeping them. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of alignment. Imagine, just for a moment, that there's a silver key in your hand. It's not meant to unlock their heart or reopen a closed chapter. That key is yours, and it opens the inner door you've kept shut for too long, the one where your full self has been waiting patiently to be seen, chosen, and protected. That version of you isn't asking to be liked by everyone. It's asking to be loved by you first. When someone drifts away or disconnects, our first instinct is often to question ourselves. But in truth, not every ending is a punishment. Many are preparations. The universe responds to frequency, not force. And when your frequency begins to evolve, people, situations, and relationships that no longer match that vibration will fall away, not out of cruelty, but out of divine design. You aren't being abandoned. You're being cleared for arrival. It's tempting to view this as loss, especially when your heart was sincere. But let's be clear, when someone leaves because they can no longer meet you where you're going, it doesn't make them wrong or unworthy. It simply means the soul contract between you has reached its conclusion. And holding on beyond that point would only delay your next blessing. Even the wisdom passed down through ancient teachings reminds us that growth requires pruning. That the branches which no longer bear fruit must be cut back, not as punishment, but so the tree may thrive. Sometimes, letting go is the most courageous act of love you can offer, both to yourself and to the other person. The law of attraction teaches that like attracts like. And now that you're healing, growing, choosing yourself, you're becoming magnetic to the kind of energy that truly honors your worth. You don't have to chase what's aligned. It will naturally find you when you make space for it. So if it feels like something's ending, let it. If a version of you is crumbling, thank it. Because your truth doesn't need a disguise anymore. And you don't need to earn love by erasing yourself. What's meant for you will never require you to hide your light. This is not just a release. It's a return. Back to yourself. Back to clarity. Back to the life that's been waiting to begin the moment you stop performing and start being. Keep the key closely, it's yours now. And it only opens the door that leads forward. Balance has always been sacred to you, Libra, not just a personality trait, but a soul instinct. You were born under the symbol of the scales for a reason. It's not about perfection or symmetry, but about honoring both truth and tenderness in equal measure. Still, along the way, many of you have mistaken balance for compromise. You've tilted yourself to fit into relationships, roles, or responsibilities that didn't honor your full self, all in the name of harmony. But harmony without wholeness is not peace, it's performance. And now, the universe is inviting you to stop performing and start aligning. The appearance of the Justice card in this reading is not a coincidence. It is your archetype, your energetic mirror, reminding you that balance is not just something you give, it's something you must claim. This isn't a punishment. This isn't a failure. This is divine recalibration. When things begin to fall away or feel off, when people fade or dynamics shift, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because your soul is taking back the center. True balance doesn't require you to split yourself in half to meet others. It asks you to stand fully in your truth so that only what resonates with that truth will remain. And this is where the soul lesson becomes so clear: you no longer have to chase what belongs to you. When you are anchored in your integrity, your energy becomes magnetic. You attract from groundedness, not from fear. And the things that no longer align? They simply dissolve, not as punishment, but as protection. This is the kind of spiritual maturity that often comes through discomfort. The moment you stop striving to hold everything in place and start allowing your energy to realign itself, everything changes. You begin to notice where your time leaks, where your boundaries bend, and where your kindness is mistaken for obligation. And from that awareness comes the power to choose different light or recalibrate not just your outer world, but your inner dialogue as well. Even in the quiet wisdom passed down through generations, there's a gentle reminder: what you allow is what continues. Sometimes, the deepest healing comes not from fighting for justice in the world outside, but from restoring fairness within. You deserve to receive the same honesty, care, and effort that you offer others so freely. And if that hasn't been true in your life, this is your invitation to change it. So take a moment. Breathe. Feel the weight shifting, not in panic, but in peace. This isn't about tipping the scales in your favor. It's about letting the scales settle where they naturally belong. When you stop trying to hold everything still, the truth reveals itself. And in that truth, there is freedom. If this resonates with you, if you've felt lately that something is out of sync, or that a part of you is yearning to return to balance, then speak it into existence. Write it. Claim it. Comment below: I choose release to restore my wholeness. Let it be more than a sentence. Let it be a commitment to yourself, a soft contract between your higher self and the life you're building. Because your evolution isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the version of yourself that never needed to negotiate their worth. That version is still here. Still waiting. And the moment you stop bending, you'll hear her voice again, calm, clear, and unshakably true. Change doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes, it shows up in the quietest of ways: a deeper breath in the morning, a night of uninterrupted sleep, or the sudden urge to rearrange your space because something about your environment no longer feels like a reflection of who you are becoming. For Libra, a sign so naturally attuned to energy and harmony, these subtle shifts are not random, they are sacred indicators of healing in motion. After confronting the emotional truth, and reclaiming your internal balance, what happens next is integration. This is where the soul work becomes physical. You start to feel it not just in your thoughts, but in your body, your habits, and your environment. The weight you've carried begins to lift, not all at once, but layer by layer. And suddenly, things that once felt heavy, decisions, conversations, memories, start to dissolve in the background. That's the sign. Your energy is no longer stuck in the past. One of the first signals is deeper rest. Your nervous system, which may have been on high alert for far too long, begins to settle. This is not just sleep, this is restoration. Your mind no longer rehearses pain before bed. Your heart no longer clings to unspoken goodbyes. You're not forcing closure anymore, you're embodying peace. That alone is monumental progress. From there, your space begins to call for change. And it's not just about decluttering, it's about energetic renewal. The objects in your home, the way light enters your room, the scent in the air, these things all hold energetic signatures. When you clear physical clutter, you're also releasing trapped emotional frequencies. A simple act like lighting a white candle as you tidy a corner becomes a quiet ceremony of clearing, inviting clarity into your daily life. The flame doesn't just brighten a space, it mirrors the fire you're reigniting inside yourself. Alongside these external shifts, a forgotten passion may return. That creative spark that once made you feel alive, the notebook you left untouched, the brush you stored away, the playlist you made for a version of yourself that once dreamed freely. This spark isn't random either. It's your soul's way of reminding you, I'm still here. Creative energy is healing energy. When you begin expressing again, even imperfectly, you're nurturing the self that was silenced during survival. This is where small, intentional practices become anchors. A cup of warm ginger tea in the morning doesn't just soothe the body, it wakes up your gut intuition. Ginger has long been associated with circulation and clarity. That clarity is what you're stepping into. And when anxiety creeps in or you feel emotionally flooded, the 444 breathing technique, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, can bring you back to your center. It's a physical reminder that you are not drowning in your feelings. You are learning how to float. These changes may seem simple, but they're profoundly powerful. You don't have to overhaul your entire life to begin anew. Healing is not about proving anything. It's about living in alignment, one small choice at a time. And sometimes, it's the quiet choices that hold the most divine weight. Even ancient wisdom tells us that before anything grand is born, there is a season of preparation, a clearing of the soil before the planting of new seeds. You, Libra, are now in that season. Tend to the soil. Light the candle. Breathe on purpose. Choose the ritual of small steps. Because the change you've prayed for is already arriving, and it's showing up exactly where you live, breathe, and begin again. Love, when it arrives from a place of wholeness, feels entirely different than the kind that's built on longing. As you continue through this sacred unraveling, Libra, something powerful begins to rise within you, the realization that the love you once begged for outside of yourself begins, first, as a quiet yes inside your own heart. You're no longer searching to be rescued. You're choosing to be seen, as you are, from a place of self-honoring. And that changes everything. The King of Swords showing up in your reading is no accident. This card doesn't speak to fleeting romance or shallow attraction, it's the arrival of maturity, discernment, and emotional clarity. It's a symbol of love that knows how to hold space, how to speak with kindness, how to choose truth even when it's uncomfortable. But here's the truth. This kind of connection can only meet you when you become that for yourself first. Because when you're no longer waiting to be filled, you become magnetic to energy that doesn't take, but reflects. For so long, Libra, you may have sought love from a place of beautiful vulnerability, a desire to be mirrored, held, understood. But when that desire turns into a void we expect others to heal, love becomes a transaction. True love, the kind that heals and elevates, is never born from lack. It's born from overflow. From two full hearts choosing each other, not to complete, but to amplify. You're stepping into that season now. A chapter where your self-acceptance becomes the foundation for all your relationships. You're no longer dating from pain, you're loving from presence. This shift may feel subtle at first. You no longer settle for half efforts. You don't entertain energy that leaves you confused. You start choosing yourself in small but sacred ways, resting when you're tired, saying no without guilt, speaking up when something matters. All of these become acts of self-love that pave the way for a deeper, more honest bond when someone worthy crosses your path. And yes, someone is coming. But they are not the prize. The prize is the version of you who no longer fears being alone. Who understands that stillness isn't emptiness, but a space of preparation. That the solitude you once ran from is now where you gather your strength, your softness, your clarity. That is the version of you they will meet. And that is why this time, it will be different. If this speaks to your heart, here's a quiet yet powerful ritual I invite you to try. Write a letter to the version of yourself who once begged for love that didn't see you. The one who thought staying silent would keep the connection. The one who tolerated less than she deserved, because she didn't yet know her worth. Write to her with gentleness. Tell her thank you for surviving, for protecting you, for trying. Then, in a safe space, burn the letter as a sacred act of release. And as the smoke rises, whisper this to yourself: I thank the past. I release with gratitude. I welcome the new version of me. This is how we make room, not by erasing what was, but by honoring it fully and letting it go with grace. And in doing so, you signal to life that you're no longer clinging. You're welcoming. You're not attached to timelines or names or outcomes. You're in alignment. And from this space, Libra, you won't have to chase anything. What's meant for you will arrive with clarity, with ease, and with respect. Because now, your heart doesn't need fixing. It's ready for reflecting. Libra, if you've made it this far, then I know something in this message was meant for you. Maybe it was a word, a moment of silence, a sentence that lingered in your chest like a soft echo of truth. And that alone is enough to tell me that you are ready, not just for healing, but for wholeness. Not just to understand the ending, but to embrace the beginning it quietly unlocks. You see, someone may be leaving, but this time, you are not falling apart. This time, you are not collapsing to keep the peace or shrinking to be enough. This time, you're rising from the center, steady, awake, and rooted in the version of you that no longer fears solitude, silence, or change. This is not a loss. This is a homecoming. For so long, you've tried to be the balance for everyone around you. The emotional diplomat, the peacemaker, the one who held it together even when you were unraveling inside. But Libra, life is not asking you to hold everyone else's center. Life is asking you to return to your own. Because that's where your real power lies, not in perfection, but in presence. Not in harmony at any cost, but in alignment at every step. So I want to ask you something, and I ask with full presence and belief in your soul's strength. What would happen if you stopped trying to be what others needed and instead chose, every single day, to be who you truly are? What kind of love would find you if you no longer begged for it, but radiated it from within? What kind of life could open for you if you trusted that letting go doesn't mean losing, it means clearing space for something more aligned, more honest, and more sacred? The truth is, nothing outside of you needs to change for you to begin. The power to shift your reality is already within you. It begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to choose you, and instead decide to choose yourself. It begins when you sit quietly and listen not to the noise, but to the wisdom already living in your body, your breath, your bones. Because you've always known. And now, you're finally ready to trust that knowing. If this message touched you even in the smallest way, I invite you to take a gentle, courageous step forward by commenting below. I choose light. I am returning to myself. Not for me. For you. For your future self who's watching you now with quiet pride, knowing you're closer than ever to the life you've always deserved. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this sacred space we've created here at Zodiac Whisper Tarot. Every like, every comment, every new subscriber is not just support, it's energy. It's momentum. It's you saying yes to deeper guidance, yes to healing, yes to becoming. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to walk this path with you today. Your presence here matters more than you know. And I hope you carry these words like a lantern, gentle, glowing, and always leading you back to yourself. Remember, Libra, the goodbye was never the end. It was your invitation to come home. And now that you're here, all that's left is to begin.